One of the biggest signs that the MAGA crowd is worried about what's going to happen at next week's presidential debate is that they're starting to downplay expectations and to set a low bar for Donald Trump. Why are they doing this? The answer is so simple. When they set the expectations really low for Biden, he blows them out of the water. Not with anything insanely spectacular, but when you set the expectations that Biden's not going to know his way on or off the stage, he won't be able to speak, he won't be able to give a State of the Union, he won't be able to debate Bernie in 2020 or Trump in 2020 or any of it, and then he does it, it hurts their cause by setting expectations so low. So now they're trying something different. Last night, Lara Trump, Laura, appeared on Sean Hannity's Fox News propaganda show. And the new thing they're doing is they're setting expectations high for Biden because he'll be on drugs. Like they're not doing it because they think, oh, Biden's a very admirable and serious debate opponent. No. They're saying Biden will probably be on the same drugs he was on at the State of the Union. And in so doing, they are setting it up so that if it appears as though Trump didn't do that well, obviously, it's because Biden is on some kind of drug. Think about how insane this is. And Trump is not, because Trump doesn't do drugs. So here is Biden talking about here is Hannity talking about Biden being jacked up, hopped up, all code words to say Biden will be on drugs, and people should be prepared for that.
The former president, took on the challenge. I don't think he'll regret it. However, the Joe Biden that we're talking about tonight, I don't think will be the Joe Biden we're going to see on debate night. I think the Joe Biden we see on debate night is going to be the guy that we saw at the State of the Union. He's going to be all hyped up, hyper caffeinated, whatever it is.
Whatever it is.
It's interesting that 70% of the country does like the idea of drug testing. I like the idea. They do it to athletes. They do it to horses in horse racing.
Right.
Why not do it to presidential candidates? I like the idea.
Let's even find more things we do to horses to do to presidential candidates while we're at it, right, Sean?
70% of Americans apparently agree with me. However, what do you expect for the debate?
Yeah, well, this is nothing new, of course. The cards have always been stacked against Donald Trump since the day he came down the escalator.
Okay, anyway, so she goes into the escalator rant. They are pre-spinning what is potentially going to be a debate disaster for Trump. Now, I'm going to be careful here. I'm not predicting necessarily disaster for either candidate. I think the most likely outcome, I know this is so boring, I should be hyping it up and lying to everybody. The most probable outcome is that Biden goes and does his thing and is generally coherent when it comes to policy, but has moments where he speaks quietly or stutters, which we know he has been dealing with. I think Trump hurls wild allegations while making no serious policy discussions of any kind. Both claim victory after the fact, and it doesn't really move the needle very much. I'm so sorry. That's like the most realistic and, quite frankly, very tedious prediction. But the MAGA world is increasingly worried that this will be a disaster for Trump. Now, just Biden doing okay would be a disaster because they've set the bar so low for months. And so accusing Biden of drug use is a classic example of poisoning the well. They suggest it's sort of like with 2020's election. If it looks like Biden won, it must be fraud because Biden couldn't possibly really win. If it appears in next week's debate that Joe Biden did okay, it's because he's on drugs. That's the only way that Biden's performance would look better than Trump's. It would be because Biden is on drugs. And that's why the framing of your opponent in this way, which, by the way, classic characteristic of fascist rhetoric. You frame your opponent in these completely imaginary terms in order to make it so that if it appears as though you lost, you didn't really lose. It's the way that fascists and authoritarians deny reality. They lie about the size of their crowd or other things. They lie about their opponents. They lie and make themselves the arbiters and source of truth. And fascism really thrives on the idea that you have an illegitimate enemy. They can't win fairly. And therefore, any means that you can use to achieve a defeat of your enemy are valid. And that's a big part of it as well. If your enemy cheats and is on drugs and steals votes and is illegitimate, well, of course you should allow me to take the presidency by force by inspiring a riotous insurrection, because my opponent is illegitimate. If my opponent were legitimate, there would be no one who would support that, right? Well, maybe some in the United States would, but certainly far fewer. And so when you argue that your opponent is incapable of winning fairly, you manufacture consent to allow society to let you do whatever the hell you want. Very dangerous. Very, very, very dangerous. And of course, the entire system is rigged against me as part of this. And so when you see these tactics, it's a sign of weakness. If you actually are coming from a place of strength, think back to Barack Obama's rhetoric during the 2012 election against Mitt Romney. It was, hey, I have a record to run on. I have better ideas than my opponent. People are going to come out and vote, and that's it. And had he lost, of course, I'm sure that he would have accepted that with grace that Trump can only imagine. So they're laying the groundwork to dismiss a Biden performance next week. That's fine because they've set the bar so low. And of course, that's part of the bigger groundwork that they're laying to argue that they won an election that they lost, if indeed they lose. And fascism at its core is for those who can't engage in fair debate and ultimately resort to lies and manipulation to try to maintain, or in this case, seize back power. Hannity knows it might not go so well. Lara Trump knows it might not go so well. And that's why they're doing it. And by the way, they're also not only poisoning the well this way, they're trying to poison the well with Hunter Biden. And I want to talk about that next. Let's say you want to figure out if Trump did use a Nazi slogan in a campaign video, or if it's just a misunderstanding. Ground News is an app and website that gathers news stories from across the world and political spectrum so you can decide for yourself. It's a great tool. I'm happy to be partnering with them for this video. Yes, Trump did in fact use a Nazi slogan in a campaign video he posted, and then he deleted it. On Ground News, I can access almost 200 articles covering the story and see that only 17% of those are right-leaning. No surprise there. Comparing coverage is interesting. Some sources on the left reference his language, comparing him to Hitler, while on the right, RT highlights his explanation of the video, and Israel's Arutz Sheva highlights that he deleted it. The Ground News Blind Spots feature will highlight stories like this that are disproportionately covered by either political side, so you are guaranteed to see the full picture. Sign up through my link for 40% off their Vantage subscription, which gives you access to all of their features. Go to ground.news/Pacman or scan the QR code or click the link in the description.